lots of big ideas for India. We've been talking about the opportunities that are going to come our way. Tony Abbott spoke about how we could be the leader of the free world in the next couple of decades. And we've also heard about artificial intelligence, creating jobs, also taking away jobs. So how do we ensure that our youth are ready to grasp all these opportunities that are coming our way? How do we ensure that we can convert knowledge to employability? And I can't think of a better panel to join me to have this discussion. Thank you so much for being with us here today. And Ravneet, I'd like to start with you. We've been talking about Viksit Bharat 2047. And by that time, we hope that India will be the skill capital of the world. But there's a long way to go for us to do that. So how can foreign universities, and in your capacity as a representative here of Deakin University, how can foreign universities play a key role here?
Thanks, Gargi, and very good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Look, you know, when you think of Viksit Bharat, the first thing that comes to mind for me, being sort of in this academic cycle of things, is skills and people. You cannot have a country leading into the future without a very strong focus on skilling people. So if you look at the Indian population, I think it's about 5% of the overall population that is skilled at the moment. So there's a huge requirement, a huge scope, and a huge need for skilling to happen at the sort of grassroots and right through the pyramid. Post-2020, with the implementation of what can really happen in India, it has opened doors for universities and Indian universities to come together to be able to do and make the difference. I think the exciting world today is how you bring in change together. How do you bring the best of both the worlds and melt it into a melting pot in India to make this big difference that India needs to see? I mean, if you look at, again, some stats around the skilling agenda, 15% of the people that go through some skilling program are able to get some sort of employment. So we still have the rest of the 85% that is looking for employment in spite of being skilled. So there is a gap, right? How do we come together with this change that will happen in the next 20 years for India to be the skill capital of the world is where foreign universities will play a huge role. And for me, it's really very interesting because Deakin became the world's first university to set up a campus in India.
Right. Well, you spoke about, developing together, taking everyone along. And Dr. Payal Kanodia, that brings me to you because your work as the chairperson of M3M Foundation has been more at the grassroots, community building. We clearly are in need of more vocational training to ensure that our youth are more employable. So if you could tell us a bit about your efforts and what more can be done.
So continuing where Ravneet left, I think she's made my job easy by saying skilling and education literally goes hand in hand, and India is a long way to go. Because whatever we talk about, a developed nation, India 2047, Skill India, Viksit Bharat, and PM Modi's vision, everything aligns with the population that lives in the rural part of India. And having said that, majority of our population even today is the rural population. So they definitely need support, they definitely need skilling. And I would like to just take you quickly through some of the programs that we run at M3M Foundation. Our programs like I Empower Academy of Skills. These academies basically upskill children in different vocational courses. There are almost 17 courses which we run across Haryana as multiple skill centers. And we train children, youth, and women in different courses and make them independent, make them employable. And the youth, which has dropped out of school, education system, it is specifically designed for them.
But Ravneet, if we can talk again about the role of foreign universities, if you can tell us what are 5 things that Deakin University can do or is doing to help us in this journey of having, a skilled youth of India.
So I've got my 5 C's that I think foreign universities can bring in. The first to me is collaboration. And when I say collaboration, I mean collaboration from top to bottom. You could look at high-value skill training through leadership training. Again, there are numerous examples that universities are already working in India, but that can be amplified. You can actually take it to the next step and really make it more accessible, not just to the elite sort of band of people, but across to India. The second to me is looking at curriculum. How do we bring best world curriculum to India, and how do we make it applicable in India? I think it's really important for Indian culture and for culture from different parts of the world to come in and make a difference in how you can change the youth of today and tomorrow. Because we live in a global world, we've got to think about how we can look at the boundaries, and make it into more of a melting pot. I think the other two for me are capacity and capability. Building India's capability is building the capability for the world, right? With 1.6 billion people and a lot of them hungry, a lot of them wanting to make a change, you can change the world. And which is to me why skilling is absolutely the imperative to Viksit Bharat.
Absolutely, and you spoke about collaboration, so I'd like to bring in, Payal here and talk a bit more about that when it comes especially to public-private partnerships. What more can be done there? What message would you have on that to the education minister, as we just heard here? How can we get states more involved? You spoke about the work that you do in Haryana, but yes, clearly more states also need to put a lot of focus on this to ensure that their youth are capable and ready for all these opportunities that are coming.
Of course, and public-private partnerships is something that is essential in any kind of work we do. And as Ravneet has already put it together, I think it's so beautiful even when you look at the top of the pyramid or the bottom of the pyramid. Collaboration, capacity building, culture, everything, literally goes hand in hand. Whether you're working at grassroots level or you're working with international universities, it's all same. The structure is same, the methodology is same. It's just that the people are different. They need to be treated a little bit differently. So collaboration is extremely important. The public-private partnerships is very, very important. And especially when you talk about working in grassroots level, social sector, public-private partnerships become even more important because there are a lot of policies, there are a lot of frameworks that are needed for the beneficiaries to take advantage of that and to be able to take full potential out of them. Hence, it is absolutely, absolutely a key to, doing any kind of a work for our youth, to make them future ready, to make them empowered. We really need the collaboration with the government, the public societies, and the grassroots population.
I just want to add, Gargi, when I think about, to Payal's point, when I think about skilling, so we have ITIs in India, right? These are the technical institutions. In my mind, if you pick an IIT and you focus an ITI as a buddy system with the top IITs and say a cluster of 5 ITIs with an IIT and focusing on one skill set, let's say energy transition, let's say green revolution, and you pick these 5 ITIs with world collaboration, you bring in the curriculum, you use technology, and you channelize the youth to be able to look at upskilling in the jobs of the future. So I really have this dream about how one can actually do, almost plot this against India's amazing education system with the use of foreign universities coming into India. Rather than just doing degrees, and I'm being in the academia, I'm not against degrees. I think degrees are a must.
Not hollow degrees, which
not
is the problem.
Hollow degrees.
Yes.
Our problem in India is we churn more graduates without the skill and the knowledge.
Absolutely.
So they don't have the jobs.
And
Absolutely.
I agree with the
That
point
has
of
to change.
future-ready jobs and technology being the key today because that is something that will make our youth future-ready.
Absolutely. We have to make our youth future ready. We're going to end this session on that, note, on that message that we want to put out there. I'm also very happy that I had an all-women panel here. It's great to see that. And women, too, will play a key role in, grasping these opportunities when we talk about Viksit Bharat 2047. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
And
very
a big round of
Thank you
applause
so
please,
much.
for these lovely ladies. Thank you.
We've had some conversations about electric mobility and charging infrastructure and various other aspects. And the tendency is to speak about personal mobility. What's the first thing that you think of when you think of electric mobility? You think of green number plates, you think of cars that you might be driving or things that you might be contemplating, or somebody calling it a toy car. Yes, that's what you think of. But this panel and these gentlemen and the work that they're doing is very different. It does not have to do with personal mobility. And they feel that what they're doing is going to bring the real change. We have Sanjeev that is with Billion E, and he runs a fleet of commercial vehicles that are powered by electric. We have Ravin, as well as Anshuman, who are at the start of the ecosystem, and they build the chargers that effectively charge this fleet, so that without that it's not going to work. And you have Sandeep, who essentially facilitates the entire ecosystem that is effectively financing a lot of these legs. So hopefully I've laid the context for this conversation. Let me start with you, Sanjeev, because ultimately you're operating the vehicles that are creating these fleets. Do you think that unfairly people talk about personal mobility too much when they're talking about electric mobility and the drive towards that?
Yeah, it's the optics. Alex, thank you for this wonderful session. As a car user and a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, it's more visible in the city area. But we forget to believe that our day starts with the milk, which is delivered through a truck. And the entire day, whether it is the food, your clothing, your machineries, everything depends on the transportation. And with a growing economy like ours, you can't get away with the road freight. And as long as that is happening, then somebody has to move goods from point A to point B. And that's the sweet spot Bilini identified. But just to add you up, I believe there are 5 elements. Of course, the customer is out there who is keen, who is sensible to switch from fossil fuel based to more sustainable. But then the OEMs have rolled up their sleeves. Legacy OEMs are the new age OEMs are introducing the product. And then comes you rightly mentioned the fuel. In this case, the reliable and dependable charging infrastructure. So the CPOs come and they depend on my friends here to give you a robust charging solutions. The fourth element, to do all these things, you need the capital. And without vitamin M, I think the whole equation is void. So at Billion E, we are now trying to see how we integrate closely in cooperation mode with all these 5 elements. Fantastic. And make the sustainable transition a reality.
Let's talk about a few numbers though. Ravin, and Shuman, I'll come to you in just a bit. We were talking just before the session, and a few of the facts that you threw at me were actually a little startling, because I must confess that even I was in the school of thought that if we're moving towards an electric future and mobility towards that, then individuals need to make the choice to go electric. But that's not true. What are the numbers that support that?
Sure, thanks for that question, Alex. And I think just before I get to the numbers, why are we trying to be electric and why are we going to clean mobility or zero emission mobility? And that is because, one, we want to delever from the tyranny of the hydrocarbon molecule, not to have to import fuel. And two, we want our children to have better quality air in the cities, right? And it's the emissions from diesel and petrol that are impacting the AQI. How do you do that? How do we achieve that in India? The fastest, right? There's 360 million vehicles registered in India on the roads today. 82% of those are 2- and 3-wheeled vehicles. 12% of those are trucks and buses. Only the balance, 6 to 8%, are cars. And therefore, the conversation, as you just started, around cars, personal mobility, is a fallacy. The way to clean up India's air and the way to delever from the hydrocarbon molecule is to focus on the 2 and the 3-wheelers and then the trucks and the buses. Already, an overwhelming majority of 3-wheelers being sold in India are electric. First year in history, 2025, there are more electric 3-wheelers than ICE 3-wheelers being sold. The journey on 2-wheelers is already being seen. Karthikeya mentioned this morning, how many green number plates do you see? You know, in 2020, it was 1 a month, then it became 1 a week, 1 a day, 1 an hour, and now you see 1 a minute because so many 2-wheelers have already converted. But the big move is buses, which is what the Indian government has done really well. The next tender coming out for 15,000 buses for 1 year, right? If you look at Australia, it's 150 buses. 15,000 buses are going to be converted from ICE to electric. And then finally, it'll be the trucks, starting with intercity and then intercity. So the 360 million vehicles, let's focus on where the real big bang is going to be, and it's public transportation.
Okay, Anshuman, come into this, because you acquired a company in the United States, and ultimately the question that I want to ask you as an OEM, as a manufacturer of a part of this entire network or ecosystem, is the availability of technology and the indigenization of that technology. How much of a challenge is that for Indian companies, and where do you see indigenization and Atmanirbharta, which is a focus for all companies and the government as well, take place in the electric mobility ecosystem?
That's a very pertinent question because today if you look at fossil fuel, we are importing a lot of, in fact 95% of the fossil fuel or the oil and gas is getting imported in the country. And we don't want to repeat the same thing in electric mobility space, because if you're going to be dependent on somebody else, then you are moving from one thing to other where you are not actually doing a great job, right? So to that extent, but the good part is in this space, a lot of investment is happening, a lot of policies support from government side in terms of a lot of promotional schemes wherein, if you invest in infrastructure, R&D, government is providing support through, PM E-Drive scheme. Then there are PMP guidelines which are focused on manufacturing of cells, batteries, ACC, PLI and all that. So as an OEM, and because a lot of stuff has to be done by the OEMs on the product side, right? Whether it is manufacturing of vehicles, whether it is manufacturing of chargers, what we do. And of course, how do you ensure that what you are creating, because at the end of the day, any subsidy or any support falls flat if the end product is not good. And then it is about hardcore commercial acumen comes into play, that why do even I want to switch over if the product is not good, and if it is not as seamless or easy to use, typically an ICE truck. If an ICE truck is easy to operate, the EV has to be similar, right? And the charging process has to be similarly flawless.
So I do want to come to you, and very quickly in 30 seconds, if possible, I want you to explain to the audience why I was calling you a facilitator, because ultimately you provide the money that greases this entire system. So first that, and two, what is the need in your opinion for capital to facilitate this ecosystem, and is there enough availability of capital, or do you think that there is a sizable need to bolster that?
Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me on the session. I love the terminology Sanjeev just used, vitamin M. Good to be providing there's a lot of vitamin M available. Happy to state here, we've just closed one of the largest fundraisers in the electric mobility history in India, raised $405 million a month back, backed by Green Climate Fund and Macquarie, which tells you the amount of institutional capital. I mean, Green Climate Fund happens to be a UN-backed multilateral, one of the largest climate impact investors in India. For them putting out $200 million in a project which is, 1.5 years old. I have 20 employees. My son was telling me when I raised $405 million, Dad, 405 by 20 is 20 million per person. I said, unfortunately, it's not coming to my bank account. But, and that's just capital. You could raise leverage and raise a debt. So capital, very important, but I can tell you the amount of money that's flowing behind electric is phenomenal. There are enough and more of green funds willing to put their money. There are a lot of impact investors who are out there trying to put their bets on a system or on an ecosystem which is accelerating. Credit goes to the Government of India, frankly. Consistency of policies, just the amount of focus that they've demonstrated in the transition from ICE to electric. The journey for electric, capital is no longer a concern, but that's not the only solution you want. I think the biggest phobia that people have is anything about transportation, whether you're transferring goods or passengers from one place to the other, is whether I'll get there. Will there be enough charging available? Thankfully with Raven and Anshuman, that's being fulfilled. But there's a lot happening before an electric vehicle comes on the ground. The mindset of the operator, the questions in his mind. So that's where Vatello steps in, helping him identify the right kind of OEM and asset, building out the charging infrastructure, building out the depot, pulling the energy from the grid, variabilizing it or Uberizing it, giving it to him on a per unit or a per kilometer basis, getting the OEM. So we take care of the entire journey, not just financing.
It's scalable. Please give a big round of applause to these lovely gentlemen and for what they've shared with us today. Thank you so much for being such a lovely audience. Gentlemen, thank you so much.